Welcome, everybody, to another edition of UFO Man Live. My name is Tim, or UFO Man, and to my side is my friend, my co host, Tommy Highway. Tommy?
Hey, folks, Tommy Highway here. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. Really appreciate that. We have a wonderful show for you this evening. Got a couple of great guests. I'll go ahead and introduce in just a moment. First, I do need to make a statement, something that has come to our attention. We've got a much smaller channel out there on YouTube that's been dropping our name to get interviews with some of the folks in ufology. And we just wanted to come out and state for the record that we are not affiliated with that particular channel. And we've actually put the word out on this as well. So just saying that, the people that we interview and all of that, just kind of beware that we don't drop anybody's names and no one should be dropping ours without a permission. Anyway, that being said, folks, we have a wonderful show this evening. We have got a very special guest. We've got Miss Lisa Savoy with us. She's an author. She's an experiencer. And of course, we were lucky enough and Terry Lovelace was kind enough to come by tonight, and he's going to help us out with the show. Terry, welcome aboard, sir.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here as always.
Thank you. And Tim?
Okay. Lisa, we're going to go into your segment first. We're going to talk about your reason for being on UFO Man. And tonight, Lisa has expressed to me in an email that she is a lifetime alien abduction experiencer. So we're going to settle into that discussion at this point. Lisa, my question to you is, can you tell us a little bit about your first encounter?
Okay. I was 3.5 years old. We used to live in Cambridge. And in back of our house, we had like a man-made hill that had train tracks on it. And back of that was this huge field. I was not allowed to go down there, but I went down there anyways. I just had the strongest urge to go down there. So I leave my house. I turn right. I would go down a little ways. Then I get to a opening underneath this hill. So I went into the field. I went to the field a little ways. Then I noticed, I seen this thing looked like the sun, but it was moving to the right. It is larger than normal. It would change from white, red to orange. And then it stopped. It hovered there for a while. Then as it got closer to me, it changed. It had like a black ring around it and had different color lights, yellow and orange, going all the way around it. I wasn't afraid. I was a very curious child. And then it got closer to me. As it got closer to me, it turned like a bronze, shiny bronze color. And it was huge. It came right down to me. And then that's all I remember. Then after that, I remember it being gone. So I thought, I go home. As I going home, I run to some kids I know. And they said to me, "Where have you been? Your parents were looking for you for hours. Where have you been?" And I thought, this is strange. I was confused. I don't know what they're talking about. So when I got home, my parents were really upset. And they said, "Where have you been? We looked for you for hours. We couldn't find you anywhere." And I was confused. I didn't know what they're talking about. So they sent me to my room. And not too long after that, one night I woke up. I noticed my room was darker than usual. And it felt cooler. Like there's no AC back then. It was cooler. Not cold, but cooler. And I noticed the back wall was pitch black. It just turned pitch black. And it looked like there's just nothing there. And I got up. And I noticed these little beings coming through the wall. Like they're only 3.5 feet high. And I remember they had large eyes. They had no hair. No ears. Had like 2 holes for a nose, a small slit for mouth, and their eyes were just huge. They had a large head. They had thin bodies, and I wasn't afraid of them. No, I wasn't. I was curious. It's like, who are these people? How are they getting here? So I started talking to one of them. I approached him, and he didn't say anything. I told my name, silence. I asked him how I got there, still did silence. So I stuck my hand out to offer him friendship. He just stared at my hand in a funny way. Then all of a sudden, something didn't feel right. Something didn't feel good. And I remember there's 8 altogether. Half of them went to my left side, and the other half went to my right side. Then all of a sudden, as I was standing there, I felt this energy going around me and through me, and I couldn't move. Next thing I knew, I was being lifted up. I was being floated towards the wall, the dark wall, and I couldn't move. If I tried to move, I would have pain all through my body, like bone deep all through my body. I couldn't twitch a finger. I couldn't even move my eyes. And if I tried to scream, my lungs hurt, really hurt. And I wanted to scream, and I couldn't. So I screamed "mummy" as loud as I could in my mind. And I eventually blacked out. And that's all I remember there. Yeah. It was horrifying. And another night, they came. The same thing happened again. I got up and tried to talk to them. Nothing happened. It wasn't until the 3rd night they came again. I seen them. I was afraid. I can remember deep down my self-conscious. I wasn't remembering, but down my self-conscious, I knew there's something wrong with these people. I was afraid of them. The same thing happened again, but this time when they paralyzed me and lifted me out, I didn't fight it. So I didn't have that excruciating pain like before us fighting it. It still didn't feel comfortable. Like I just felt light and heavy, and I couldn't move, and breathing was really hard. And then they took me out, and that's what I remember. But I knew there's something wrong. It wasn't until later I started having these recurring dreams about what they did with me. They were doing these experiments on me. It's like a really rough exam. And I call them the little people as a child. That's what I call them, the little people.
If I may ask, did you ever come to go to your parents or anyone else with these experiences, or is it just something that you sort of kept to yourself?
I did try to tell my parents, but they just told me I was dreaming. They're just dreams. I was just having nightmares. And I was the only, I had a sister in the room with me, and I was the only one that's seen them. But there's one night she did wake up and they were there. And that was kind of frightening because I remember one time I got up, my sister got up. I said, "Oh, good, my sister's up. She's finally going to see them," because she always made fun of me. So she gets up and she sees them. She looks horrified. I'll never forget the look on her face. She was terrified. Her face turned really pale. And I could say to her, "I told you they're real." That's all I could say to her. And I can tell she's going to scream. I said, "No, don't scream. They don't like that." And it was too late. Sure enough, I remember the ET brought up his right arm. I call it the fire stick. It's actually known as the wand. I heard people call it the wand. He pointed at her, knocked her right out. She fell lifeless backwards. I know for a fact she hit her head on the bed as she fell down. And I thought, he killed her. I've seen him use a wand before. It gives you a shock, but I don't recall seeing him knocking one out at that time. She fell on the floor just lifeless. And that's all I remember from there. But I remember when I woke up, my sister gets up and she's complaining her back being sore and back of her head sore. And she went complaining to my mom about this. But the weird thing was she didn't remember it. She remembered nothing. And I found that frustrating. She didn't remember anything at all. Yeah.
Right. A lot of people mention that they have lack of memory of what happened. They just wake up with bruises or marks or pain or difficulty breathing or things of that nature, or maybe their clothes torn, or we interviewed Kathleen Martin last week, and she was mentioning how there was like a pink dust on Betty Hill's dress. And so that was one thing that indicated to her that something happened. So yes, I agree with you. A lot of people don't know, and in some cases, they'll take one member of the family, and then they'll isolate the rest of the family so that they have no knowledge of what's going on with the one that they took.
Yeah.
What do you think, Terry?
I agree with you. They bothered me. To my knowledge, they didn't bother my sisters. Although my sisters knew something was going on. They didn't really want to talk about it. Just curious, Lisa, were you and your sister reticent to talk about this? I mean, she didn't really have any memory of it, did she?
She didn't really talk about it right away, but to me, later on in my experiences, I actually made contact. Like, I had a visit from a Nordic woman. I called her Angela. And I didn't know at that time. My sister said she'd seen her because my mom said that she would tuck my sister into bed. She described her in full detail what this woman looked like. Like, we lived in a 2-story house. And she said, "Mom, I see a woman looking in our window." And I never told my sister what she looks like. And she described her in full detail.
Yeah.
And apparently my mom managed to catch her, take me out one night. And my mom just said she just stood there helpless. She didn't do anything. It was like she couldn't do anything. Like, Angie was looking at her. But mom just stood there, did nothing. I had my back, faced my mom, and I was actually going out through the window with this woman.
Wow.
And my mom described her in full detail. I never told her what she looks like. She knows exactly how she looks like.
Interesting.
Mm.
We do have a question for you, Lisa, before you continue. Surgery 68.
Tim, we're losing your audio, brother.
Oh. Okay, how about now?
Yes, much better.
Surgery 68 says, is there such a thing as a good alien?
Angie, she's very good. She's Nordic. And I find them very peaceful, caring people. Like, they never took me forcibly. They never did any experiences on me. Matter of fact, she has a small triangle ship made for 2 people. And she would take me on this ship. And later in time, she took me to this huge triangle ship. She took me to that. We went there. Mama was there. I was shown how they put one of their small triangle ships together. I actually seen them put a ship together. It took a while, but I seen them put a whole ship together.
Yeah.
Wow.
Very interesting.
Can you tell us anything about the inside of the ship that you might remember?
I remember inside the ship, it was huge. It's a place where they had other ships. I seen one that's like an oval shape. I seen one that's like a stingray. And there's one I couldn't see. They had like boards around it, like white boards, and had like a little black circle in the center of them. That's one I couldn't see. And it was huge. I remember they had something like a little cart. It had 8 seats in it for passengers and 1 for the driver. And it had no wheels. It had like a white piece underneath it. There's no wheels. And it just glided silently on the ground. And
that's interesting. That's one of the memories that I had, was a golf cart like thing that had no wheels, that was motoring around, had like 8 people in it, or 8 ETs in it.
yes. And they had a bigger one. Like, I didn't see it come into the hangar like that one did. Like, there's like something like a highway in the back of the hangar. And it had entrances there. And I can see there's a bigger one. It's the same as the little cart that had no wheels, just like a white piece underneath it. And it's like something like a highway. They had 2 lanes there, and they would go up and down that. That's how they make their transportation where they're going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And they were carrying something like a cargo on back, and they had like some type of wrap on it.
Have you ever seen any writing or
Yes, I
you know,
did.
words?
I shown example to my regression, my see for regression, and she told me it's ancient Nordic.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah,
Very
I found it interesting too. Yeah,
So you have been regressed.
yes, 7 times.
Really? Can you sort of share what that experience is like?
I found with me during regression, it literally took me there. I mean, it's like I was actually literally living that spot. Like, there's one thing I found fascinating to do regression on. Like, we had to do this test. There's me and 3 others. Like, there's 2 girls and 2 boys. We call it the maze game. And what it is, we had to learn, there's a place there, like a class. We had to learn symbols. And we had to learn these symbols to make our way through this maze. And so after we learned these symbols, I remember they took us down a long white hall. It was bright. The walls like really bright white. And we got to a door at the end of this hall that slid over to the left. But I didn't like that room. It was weird. It was like a medium gray, the walls, and it wasn't bright. It was a little darker in there. And they had like funny thin lights going around inside this rectangular shaped room. So we go in there to the right, and to the left, they had, and the wall there, this room, they had 2 large sliding doors. So they open these doors, and you can see like these entrances, like square entrances, like 3 on the top, 3 in the middle, and 3 in the bottom. And you can see they're lit up inside. Like they had lights. And there's 9 levels. And we had to go into these, depending which level we went to, like sometimes be on one of the top or the middle or the bottom. First time I went in there, it was a bottom one. And you had to crawl through it. And if you went up to the higher levels, it has like a step ladder, and you climb the step ladder and you go in that way. So they have us, 4 of us, going to every entrance they want us to go into. After that, they slide the door shut behind you. And believe me, it was not a good feeling when they close those doors on you. So you were to the point, okay, guys, if we don't do this maze, we're not going to go home. But they made us feel that way, so we would do it. And as you crawl through it, like they had like long thin lights running on the bottom to the maze, and they had these symbols on them. They're in black, and they're raised. If you weren't looking down at the symbols, you can feel them with your hands. I found that interesting. And each level was different. Like first, it was short. Some seemed really longer, and so we had to go through that. And the turns, that they're curved, like turns that are the curve. And as you go into turn here, they have like a sunlight on the side to enter the turn there, and they have symbols on there as well. So you had to follow these symbols, figure out which way to get out and finish this maze. And it was hard, it was awkward because I see you're on your hands and knees. And I believe the walls are metal. They're made of metal. And this maze, there's different levels. Like there's certain parts you'll find like a ramp, and you would go down this ramp. They had to make sure you went down the right ramp to go down to the level you had to get out. And I remember at the very far back there, where they have the entrance to get out, if you're up too high, like on the bottom, they had like little openings, different shapes. And I go over to the wall there. I would look through these holes there, and I can tell we're up high, and you can see trees down below. I thought, oh my word, I had to keep on going down. So when I went down to the bottom, you go to the back, you will see those openings again on the bottom. So you can feel the breeze blowing in through these little holes there. So we had to find out which one let us out. So we go over to it. We would push it open. We would slide out feet first. Then we had to run from that spot. And there's a certain group of trees we had to go to wait for them to take us back to the ship after all 4 of us got there. But there's one girl, she kind of disappears. There's another girl with me. Like one time we were waiting at the trees. We didn't see the little girl with us. We heard her screaming, like a terrible scream, like she was getting murdered. And we haven't seen her with us ever since. She was gone.
So have you seen multiple people on board every time that you've been on the ship?
Yes.
Very
And
good.
each one of us had groups, like also certain group, the maze game. Like there's like 4 altogether, each group. And I noticed too, it's mostly boys. There's very little girls in there. It's mostly boys that did that test. I found that interesting. Yeah, it's mostly the boys.
The kids that you saw on the ship, did you know them from school, or did you only know them from association on the ship?
Yes, I made one friend a boy, but only knew him on the ship. Yeah. I never knew from anywhere else. No.
Can you describe what the aliens actually looked like?
Like they're 3.5 the Greys or the Nordics.
I mean, it's the either way.
Okay. Well, the Greys are 3.5 feet high. They're gray from head to toe. They have large heads, large black eyes, 2 holes for a nose, a little slit mouth, no ears, and no hair. And they don't talk. They communicate their mind. And Angela, the Nordics, Angie has long white hair. I mean, like really white hair, straight hair. Her forehead's a little longer than ours. Her eyes are a little bigger, not like the Greys, but they're a little bigger. She had green blue eyes. She had very fair pale skin. And she's tall. She wore a blue jumpsuit.
Did she communicate verbally or by telepathic means?
Telepathic. She's like a second mother to me. Like every night she'd bring me home, she'd give me a hug, and she'd stay with me till I went to sleep. Well, in the morning she'd be gone.
When is the last time that you can recall actually having an experience?
It's mostly when I was a child. Mainly as a child that I've seen her. And right now it's more like a psychic, like communication. Like she has come to me in my dreams, but not as physical as she did as a child. It's more like a psychic communication right now. But she's still there.
Let me ask you this. Has this actually affected the relationships that you've had with people? I'm talking about personal relationships, romantic relationships. Has there been, an effect from that?
Actually, my husband's been very supportive. And I think the reason why he's very supportive, I had some really horrible bruises. I don't mean like a normal bruise. You can see there's something sharp went into my skin. I had that. And I had burns. They were horrific, the burns I had. And he's seen all those. And he says, how are you getting those? And there's some things he doesn't talk about. Like he'll say sometimes he'll wake up and he'll remember seeing a small person there. At first he thought it was my sons, but now they're older. He doesn't talk about that much, but he has seen that. And he has waken up. No, not anywhere is no home to be found. He has done that.
Wow.
That's all he remembers. Like he'll wake up and he'll just go sleep again.
Have you had any more encounters with the small Greys?
I have here. Yes. They come to my closet. I find every time I move to a different area, it's either the wall or the closet. Here is the closet. And it's only a couple feet from my bed to make it worse. So they come in, it's pretty quick. And they take me out.
What was your most recent encounter? Can you talk about that?
Not that long ago. Last week. I don't remember really a whole lot. It's so weird. I'll be lying there fully awake and I can sense her coming. I turn around and I can feel them come behind me. Before I get a chance to get close to my husband, they have me, and that's it. So I remember the last one.
Do you remember how they take you out of the building? Do you go through the closet or do you go through the ceiling?
I go through the closet. It's usually the wall. I think there's only a couple times I went through the ceiling, but it's usually the closet or the wall. Yeah.
Well, if I may, you mentioned that you have children. Have they experienced anything like this?
I never mentioned anything in my book about it, but they have.
So they're also being taken because we find that more often than not, this seems to be a generational experience.
I'm not sure they're being taken, but they have seen things. They have seen things.
I see.
Like that time I had this horrific experience in Winnipeg, and my son, my oldest son, didn't know at all about being abducted. But he said that was different. Like one time I had this horrific experience. My husband's away for 6 months because he's used to be in the military. He's in used to be a supply tech in the army. And one time in Winnipeg, this is a while ago, he went away for 6 months. But even before that, he noticed my bruises and that were getting more extreme for some reason. So when he leaves for 6 months, not too long after he leaves, one night, like one morning, I wake up. I feel a burning sensation on my knee. So I went to examine it, and as soon as I put my hand on it, it was a horrible burning sensation in my knee. And I thought, what is going on? So I uncovered myself, and I could not believe the huge burn on my knee, both of them. And later on, after I got up, I realized I had right here, burns here on each arm. Exact same spot too. They're always in the exact same spot. And I had this huge burn on the upper and side of my leg, or bruise. It was pitch black. And I had 3 little circles way up high inside of my legs, like 3 little circles, like someone drew, like colored 3 little circles. And I thought, what in the world? And I had small fingerprint bruises all over me, from my breast, my stomach, on my arms and legs. And to make it worse, I woke up in the morning, I felt violently ill. I was feeling sick. I was hot, dehydrated. I had pain from my head to toe.
Wow.
And I got in the morning, I had to run to the bathroom to get sick. It was horrible.
Well, if I may ask you, have you ever written anything about this? Have you ever recorded your experiences?
I have this in my book. I wrote it down.
You have an upcoming book?
Yes, it's in there.
Very good. I mean, can you talk about your project or?
Yes, like I'm not sure about the date yet, but it's getting closer. So
I see.
I know the ebook will be out first. It's usually the first one out.
Mm-hmm.
So when she comes out with the book, we're going to bring her back on our channel, and we're going to talk to her about her book in depth. And then everybody in the chat can also ask her questions about her book, because maybe in the book she remembered things that she hasn't remembered tonight.
Sure.
So hopefully we can address those then.
Another thing too, everything in my book is without regression.
Without regression.
Yes.
Very good. Very good. Terry, did you have any further questions?
Yeah, I'm just curious. You got transcripts of your regression therapy, everything that was said.
Yes, I still have that. I have all recordings on me.
Did you find that process to be therapeutic? Do you find it healing?
Yes, I found it very therapeutic. Like people say it's just for memories. In my case, not really, because I already know all that stuff. But therapeutic, very. I advise it for that. So it really helps you, especially to have someone you can talk to, and they understand what you're saying. It really helps. I recommend. I know there's a lot of people are afraid of ridiculing that, but I recommend that you do find somebody, because there's not one time I thought I'd never tell anybody, but it wasn't working out too good for me. It was too hard. Especially after in situations in Winnipeg, it's just too hard.
Yeah.
Well, we've definitely heard regression described as a relief, a release, things like that. So certainly a lot of folks feel the same way about it you do. And then again, there are those people that have been regressed and it absolutely scared the hell out of them as well. So it can kind of be a double-edged sword depending on the mind of the person involved, really.
Yeah.
Right. We can reference Barney Hill's regression in regards to horrific fear expressed. If you ever listen to his regressions, he's screaming constantly, and they're horrific screams. They're not like, oh, I'm comfortable, it's benevolent.
Panic.
He felt like he was going to be killed.
You know, the part of that, I read that transcript. I've read it a couple times. And there's the part where he's standing there looking at the ship and he can see people inside, and he sees somebody he identifies or somehow knows is like a captain or officer or something. And he's screaming, he's going to look at me. He's going to look at me. And I just find that whole part of the transcript chilling to read, because he's so very afraid.
Right, and the fact that guy was wearing a black suit with a black cap, and they thought he even made the reference to the fact that he thought he might be of Nazi origin.
Yeah,
So
just
that was scary for him.
And that was really one of the. I mean, there have been a lot of great cases out there, abduction cases. Terry is certainly, his experience is absolutely phenomenal, out of this world, if you will. But there have been a lot, but the Betty and Barney Hill seem to be the one that really kind of put the experience sort of on the map, if you will. And again, we were privileged that last week to be able to interview their niece, and it was just very enlightening. It was fantastic. This is happening to people. I mean, this is something that is actually happening to people. People from all over the world are coming up with very similar stories, eerily similar. And I just don't believe that there's any way that, mass hysteria, let's call it mass hysteria. Well, that's a small area, a small group of people, no matter how you slice it. I mean, we're not talking mass hysteria usually doesn't affect someone, let's say in Australia, from something that's happening in the United States. So I don't think it's that. I think that these people are actually having these experiences. We have evidence. Terry himself has been tagged, if you will. I mean, he's got some implants and things of that nature that we've talked about in the past. And he's just one of many people that have that experience. We know this is real. And I think I like the way Lou Elizondo's put it recently. Look at, if you're denying it at this point, you're just in denial, because we know it's real. Now we just got to figure out what the hell it is.
Right, exactly. And one thing to add, there are people in tribal groups, like in the deep jungles, that have no access to technology or cell phones. And they're having the exact same experience with the Greys, and they're reporting it exactly the same way. So what I'm saying to you is, if we got people with no access to any type of media to where they could change their story or make up a story, then that lends credibility to the whole phenomenon.
Sure. And we look at the ghosts of the past. We look at the things that the Incans have left us, and carvings. And we look at a little further down the road, we've got different kinds of cave paintings from the Indians, where you've got guy chasing buffalo, UFO with a bunch of gray aliens, then guy chasing buffalo. Again, how do you do that? I mean, and we've talked about this sort of ad nauseum, but the fact of the matter is, if you lived back in those days, you lived to the ripe old age of 30, if you were lucky. You spent your short, miserable life either worrying about disease or you're that far away from starvation. So these people are actually going to sit down and spend the time and resources to create a stone carving of a UFO or a guy in a spacesuit or something like that. They didn't have an imagination. When you're starving to death, you don't have imagination. Your imagination is about food, not aliens,
Right. So it had to really influence their lives for them to make that
Mhm.
choice to describe that on a wall or
They
on
were,
a cave.
they were trying to show the rest of the village what they experienced.
Yeah, they didn't know what they saw, but they knew it was important somehow to memorialize it, record it. Yeah.
Right. So your stories about your abductions, Lisa, are very important, and we do appreciate the fact that you got some of them out tonight. It's very necessary for people in our chat room to understand that you are not alone in this world.
Mhm.
There are thousands, if not more than hundreds of thousands of people that are actually being taken and experiencing them. The little grays and the Nordics and the mantis people and a whole bunch of different alien races at this point. We know for a fact that there are also thousands of people that have been taken that have no memory, like you do.
In fact,
And so
most.
having a waking memory is very important because you're able to stay awake. And for some reason, they let you do that.
Yeah.
Mhm. We did have a question from the chat room. This one's coming from Jonathan Dust, and he's asking you if these aliens had names or designations or something like that of any kind that you're aware of.
Like if they had any names?
Yeah, but their
Right.
names or they have numbers or
No,
no names.
no. Just
But the Nordic lady did.
Nordic did, yeah. But the gray, no.
Okay.
We also have another question. It's from Surgery 68. Do the Nordics do implants or is it just the grays?
In my experience, I never had them do anything like that to me. It's just the grays. In my experience, that's how it's been for me.
Okay.
Okay, well, listen, we really appreciate your story. It's very interesting. You're always welcome to come back and tell us more. We really appreciate you being here, but I think we're going to probably go ahead and move on to the next segment, which is going to be, folks, the UFO review, a video review of the week, and we've got some great ones on there, so we can go ahead and roll that whenever we're ready.
Okay. Here's a six-sided object over Philadelphia. This one I'm on the fence about, guys, because it almost looks like a cube. And it's really low. So I'm wondering if it could be some type of radio-controlled object other than a UFO. What do you think, Tommy?
Well, I don't see the telltale halo around it, the energy halo, which we tend to see in a lot of close-up sightings like that. I don't know if that's a cue or if it's something that's actually morphing to change shape. If that's a drone, I've never seen one like it. I'd like to know where the propellers and stuff are on them because they're not air apparent. Terry, what are your thoughts on this one?
I see a cube. Of course, it could be a six-sided figure. I agree with you. I don't see any means of propulsion. I don't see any, unless they're rotating so fast, we can't see the propellers, but I don't know. I see it as a 3D cube.
Right there, you can see energy around it.
Yeah.
I think
But
so.
I mean, if that's a drone, it's something I've never seen before.
Yeah, I have no idea what that was. In my opinion, somebody in my comment section suggested it might be a black box with a balloon in it and some type of radio control. David Snyder in the chat says it looks like a drone.
Did we see it enter the frame and exit the frame? I always like to see that.
I don't think we saw that.
Okay.
Let me see if I can go back a little bit here. I think it just shows it flying.
Yeah.
No, it didn't exit the frame.
Yeah.
But if it were a box with some type of radio controlled device on the inside, we wouldn't necessarily see the rotors.
No.
So I don't know what that is. I'm on the fence about that one. Okay, here's original raw footage over Puebla, Mexico. This one had me, I don't know, guessing. I have no idea what this is, although I have a possibility. Now
So
this
it's being
thing is
shot from a video or shot from a vehicle.
right. It's moving really quick. It is not stationary.
No.
It's two black lines with a white line down the middle. It will stop and hover on a dime.
It just did. Look at that. That is so, because it was definitely traveling. You could see it passing the other telephone poles. Wow.
Yeah, I thought it might be a banner pulled behind a plane. But according to the gentleman who submitted this to me, there was no plane and no sound.
You'd be able to see it. It should be right there. I mean, the strings on those things aren't that long. Huh.
I think that's impressive.
Yeah.
I think it's two parallel objects moving in perfect synchronization. I don't that the line down the center. I think that's two parallel objects.
Sky. Yeah.
Just a guess. Yeah.
It could very well be. Well, we either will debunk or verify this one. This one is going to go down as a UFO then.
Yeah, I think so. What do you think, Lisa?
I like that. It's interesting. Sounds
Definitely
like,
put in the definite maybe pile.
Yeah. Somebody in my chat room thought it was a drone at one point because we're seeing it from the underside. So maybe there are two rotors on the top that are moving so fast that we can't see them. But the problem with it is there's no sound.
well, drones are noisy.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're noisy.
Cool.
Yeah. Very interesting. I don't know what that is.
Juana Loves You in the chat room says, not a drone, it's a UFO. Occam's Racer says it's pretty
What
large.
is that, man? Oh,
This is over Bronx,
guys,
New York.
That's a UFO. Yo. Oh, shit. Yo, there's a UFO right here. I got it. First on camera. UFO. Right here, CCP. Oh. Oh.
Kind of hard to see this one except when it's far away.
Oh, guys. That's a UFO.
Hard to bring it in.
Oh.
It's really hard to bring. Oops, sorry. I was pausing it there. Oops. All right. Well, here we go.
What is that, man? Oh, guys. That's a UFO. Yo.
What do you think that is, Tommy?
It looks solid to me. I don't believe it's a cloud formation or anything. Look at the other clouds around it. It just doesn't fit that at all. I think we're looking at something that's a stationary object that's solid.
Oh.
You know,
I don't
I'm
think it's-
always suspect when I don't see it enter the frame, when it's a static image that doesn't move, and if the video ends before it exits.
That's a UFO.
It's hard to tell then, yeah.
Yeah.
Yo.
But some people do experience battery drain when they're filming stuff,
Very true.
or they panic and they quit filming it.
Yo,
Yeah,
it's a
true.
UFO.
Does that thing look like it's
right here.
undulating or moving in
Yes.
I
somewhat?
got
Yes.
it.
Yeah,
First on camera.
that's impressive.
UFO.
Got to give it a definite maybe.
CCP. Oh. Oh. What is that, man?
This is replay the original speed.
Guys, that's a UFO. Yo. Oh, shit.
And see, there you can see it
Yo, there's a
undulating.
UFO
Yeah.
right here. I got it. First on camera. UFO. Right here, CCP. Oh. Oh.
What is going on? Cool. Well, anyways, these are some lights over Sacramento, California. There are 5 of them, but right here you only see 4. But there are 5. There's one up higher. And what I like about this video footage is they disappear and come back.
Yeah.
I don't know what these are. These look like the small white orb UFOs that you see a lot of. But because they're moving in a group, and
Could be
sometimes,
Tic Tacs.
sometimes you see them, one of them merge with another one. This is where you can see them the best.
That's great footage.
Yes, it is.
David Snyder says they're flying in formation.
Is this the exact speed of the film, or has this been speeded up at all?
Nope, exact same speed.
I'd say that takes them out of the drone realm because they're moving awfully quick for that. At least the regular, 4-rotor drones that we're accustomed to. Quadcopter.
Well,
Disappearing and reappearing is pretty cool too.
Mhm.
yeah, that's what I was pointing out, disappearing and reappearing. What do you think, Lisa?
Well, I find it interesting how they disappear and reappear, and sometimes they seem to join together. Yeah. Then they disappear.
These are just some close-ups of the actual objects. Okay, here's an odd object with what I call tendrils, most likely protuberances hanging down from it. I do not know what this is.
What is the white thing that streaks across the sky?
It's it's a video remnant because it was filmed with a VHS camera rather than current technology.
So it's just an artifact on the
It's an artifact of the film. Yeah.
VHS film.
Interesting.
It's the first time I've seen a UFO of that shape. It's interesting.
Here's raw footage filmed by the ISS International Space Station on 9/15/2021. Now they enter in on the top of your screen, and you will see a whole bunch of them. Now, I'll highlight it again. They're coming from space, going into the atmosphere.
Oh yeah, my gosh.
Cool.
Now, if you look up here at the top of the screen, at the curvature of the Earth, you can see them starting to enter before I change the image.
So that's not space debris floating around. That's coming from the outside the Earth's atmosphere and into the lower orbit where the ISS is.
Right.
I saw a red thing there a few frames back, right there on the edge. Did anybody else see that?
Right. Yes, I did too. I don't know what that was.
It looks like they're entering orbit. I don't know.
Or just maintaining a certain elevation in orbit.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, and here they are coming in at the top of the screen again. Manny Sykes says, could they be micro satellites? No. Probably not. But then again, we don't know. So, good suggestion.
I know Tesla been setting up a lot of satellites lately. SpaceX.
Yeah. Here's a UFO swarm near the ISS.
There's so many of them.
The scientists are becoming more and more convinced that there's some sort of an underwater base, and possibly even more than one of those on the planet, or under the water of the planet, I should say. Because I mean, there's like this. How do you hide that? I mean, that's a fleet of that size right there. You know, what do you do? Send them to Cleveland? I mean, of course not. You're going to have to put those someplace where humans cannot go or don't normally go.
Yeah.
Somebody suggested, Terry, I'm going to talk to you about this. Somebody suggested that these might be ice particles that are being picked up by the camera and they're reflecting the light from the space station. And I wouldn't know if that's necessarily the case.
I guess my question would be, where did the ice come from? Did the ice break off the space station? I mean, I'm no expert on that. I
Red
don't
thing
know.
again.
Yeah.
Look at that red thing. You see the red thing again right
No,
there?
I missed it.
Right there. Yeah,
in the middle.
right in the middle of the screen.
Looks like there may be a couple of them actually.
Yeah, I don't know what those red lights are. It's almost like they're organizing what's flying by.
Yeah, they're not moving. They're stationary. Huh.
It's like they're in formation.
Right. Occam says this is not very old. It's excellent footage. Yes, thank you, brother. I agree.
The red thing might be a camera element.
Yeah, it could be.
Ah,
Brent Elliott says Mars attack. Amanda B says maybe. All right, I zoomed ×4. The reason I did this is because I wanted you to notice that there are lights that are flickering and they are undulating more or less. They are not totally stationary, even though they appear to be. If you look, the lights are undulating.
yeah.
And those two always seem to be in the same. Ooh, did you see that other flash down below? the two and back, there was a flash. Surgery 68 says, wow.
I think I'm seeing all kinds of things here, not just those lights, but the things that are the smaller, dimmer ones, the red ones, and there's even a couple more white ones there, and they're stationary.
The white ones, yep, exactly. Here's a possible Space Force TR-3B being chased by a laser. Night vision. I don't call that a smart thing to do with the laser, but the thing about the TR-3B is everybody was worried, oh, the laser's going to get in the windows of the TR-3B. Well, the TR-3B doesn't have windows. It has cameras, outward-facing cameras. So
Yeah,
we don't know who's running that laser either.
Right, we don't know.
If you happen to own industrial laser, I would really not point it toward the sky for any reason. I mean, you could. We've seen people mess with UFOs before with it, and it's just not a good idea.
Right, and this is what looks like a TR-3B.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've come to the end of our UFO video review for 9/25/2021. We hope you enjoyed the UFO video review, and now we're going into some UFO news presented by the man, the legend himself, Terry Lovelace.
Well, thanks for the nice introduction. I appreciate that. I've got a little bit of news to share. This was given to me by a reliable person on September 16th. And it's been around since September 16th. So a lot of you may have already seen and heard this. And I just want to talk about a couple of things that I think are important. There is a copy floating around on the internet of the 2022 National Defense Authorization Act, which was approved by Congress. And it authorizes the establishment of a office to address unidentified aerial phenomena. That's the purpose of the exercise. And it does a couple other things. It authorizes funding and does the usual things that you'd see in a bill meant to create a new entity like this, and has some reporting requirements. The report to an annual report to the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee, House Intelligence, and they also added the House of Foreign Affairs and the Senate Foreign Affairs Relations Committee, which kind of brings a diplomatic element into the mix, which I thought was interesting. And it also kind of implies unnamed allies to bring in foreign relations. So I wonder if maybe there's some kind of information sharing going on. The other thing I found really interesting was, and of course I don't have the section that it references, unfortunately, but there's section 1654, and it says, sense, S-E-N-S-E, sense of Congress on indemnification and the conventional prompt global strike weapon system. I don't know what that means, but it's scary as heck to me.
Yes.
Yes.
Sense of Congress on indemnification. Indemnification is a legal term to mean to hold harmless. So sense of Congress on indemnification. I mean, the sentence is really two parts. And the conventional prompt global strike weapon system. Prompt means right away. Conventional, I don't know if they mean conventional as opposed to nuclear. Global strike weapon system. I didn't know we had such a thing. There's probably a lot of things we have that I don't know about. But it's interesting. The last thing that I found really interesting is the reporting. What it does is this used to be, when it was ATIP, in the hands of Department of Naval Intelligence, and it's now moved. And it's going to fall under the Department of Defense, which pulls in all the armed forces, Homeland Security, Coast Guard, Air Force, Space Force, you name it. It pulls them, all those, under one umbrella. And that's kind of interesting. And it makes the DOD and the Secretary of Defense and the Director of National Intelligence, which is for the first time in the history, a woman. Her name is Avril Haines. That's the director's name. And it's just an interesting development. So I think we'll hear more about this, and I think there'll be some leaks. I hope. I'm sure there will be. So what this all means, I really don't know. I mean, I know kind of what it means, but at a deeper level, I really don't know. We're gonna have to wait and see.
If anyone out there wants further information in regards to this specified classified document and letter that Terry was just talking about, the debrief on the internet has come out with an article in depth about what is going on with this new permanent organization. So check that out, debrief.com, and you can find out some more information. Tommy?
Let's be honest, and Tim and I were speaking of this a few days ago. The United States government has never stopped investigating UFOs. I don't believe that for a moment. I believe that it's been in their national interest, and especially militarily speaking, to continue the investigation. To me, it just seems like at this point, what they're doing is they've actually come up with an actual arrangement, an actual group, because now that they've come out of the closet with it, if you will, and they've admitted that these things are in fact real. Now maybe they can actually push some real funding to it instead of having to get funding from the black projects or a tail end of something else, which is what they've been doing. So let's just hope that these new organizations actually do their job, and not only do their job, but come clean with us about it. It's time. This one thing that really ticks me off about this whole UFO report business is that Tim and I have a very good idea of what's actually in the classified version. The classified version is not an 8th grade book report B+ work. In fact, it is a very thick report, very well done. And it speaks of not only the UFOs and has footage and photos of UFOs sitting out in front of or right next to a plane, like flying in formation. Not only do we know that exists, but we also have all kinds of sonar tracks and strange things that have happened in the ocean, nuclear submarines being harassed and things of that nature. We know that that's out there. So hopefully we'll see some of that at some point, but
Also, people being lost to UFOs. I mean, taken and never returned.
Mm-hmm.
So, so there's a lot of information out there, like Tommy said. And if you're interested, just Google it, or you can come over to the UFO Man channel and check out our past live streams. We've covered a lot of that information, and we've had Terry Lovelace on a few times, so you can listen to him as well. Lisa, we're really glad that you were here, and we do want you to come back again. Okay.
I will. Yes, I will. Yeah.
Okay, Tommy, are we going to go into our next segment?
Yeah, I think we'll do that. But before I do that, folks, I just want to remind everyone that we're going to make a slight change here on the program just to see how it works. We've had a lot of requests to actually set the start time of the show an hour later. So, and it just seems to be, we sort of hit our stride at about 10 o'clock Eastern time. So Tim and I are going to give this a try. We're going to go ahead and start the show at 10 o'clock Eastern time, at least for the foreseeable future, and see how that works out for everybody. Because we want to try to accommodate as many of our fans as we can. It's just that we understand it's Saturday night, and a lot of folks go out and, shake their booty and all that on Saturday night. So we're going to see if we can maybe make this a little bit more convenient. That being said, folks,
right.
You hear about UFO crashes like Roswell and even the Aurora, Texas thing and all of that. Well, the fact of the matter is UFO crashes are not native to the United States of America. In fact, they've happened all over the frickin' place. We've had several crashes that we know about in South America. We had one big one in South Africa that had a couple of live beings in it. This was back in the early 80s. So these things happen from time to time. But I'm going to go ahead and tell you the story this evening about one that's called the Mexican Roswell. This is a very interesting story. On 25th of August, 1974, at 22:07 hours, U.S. air defense radar detected an unknown approaching U.S. airspace from the Gulf of Mexico. Originally, the object was tracked at 2,200 knots or 2,530 miles per hour on a bearing of 325 degrees and at an altitude of 75,000 feet. A course that would intercept U.S. territory about 40 miles southwest of Corpus Christi, Texas. After approximately 60 seconds of observation, at a position of 155 miles southeast of Corpus Christi, the object simultaneously decelerated to approximately 1,700 knots, which is 1,955 miles per hour, turned to a heading of 290 degrees, and began a slow descent. It entered the Mexican airspace approximately 40 miles south of Brownsville, Texas. Radar tracked it approximately 500 miles to a point near the town of Coyame, in the state of Chihuahua, not far from the U.S. border. There, the object suddenly disappeared from the radar screens. Okay, well, what happened to it? During the flight over a Mexican airspace, the object leveled off at 45,000 feet, then descended to 20,000 feet. The descent was in level steps, not a smooth curve or straight line, and each level was maintained for approximately 5 minutes. So in other words, it was coming down a little bit at a time, okay, for whatever reason. Now, bear with me one moment. The object was tracked by two different military radar installations. It would have been within range of Brownsville civilian radar, but it is assumed that no civilian radar detected the object due to the lack of any such reports. The point of disappearance from the radar screens was over a barren and sparsely populated area of northern Mexico. At first, it was assumed that the object had descended below the radar's horizon, and a watch was kept on any reemergence of the object, although none occurred. At first, it was assumed that the object might be a meteor because of the high speed and descending flight path, but meteors normally travel at higher speeds and descend in a smooth arc, not in steps. And meteors do not normally make a 35-degree change in course. Shortly after detection, an air defense alert was called. However, before any form of interception could be scrambled, the object turned to a course that would not immediately take it over U.S. territory. The alert was called off within 20 minutes after the object's disappearance from the radar screen. 52 minutes after the disappearance, civilian radio traffic indicated that a civilian aircraft had gone down in that area. But it was clear that the missing aircraft had departed El Paso International with the destination of Mexico City and could not, therefore, have been the object tracked over the Gulf of Mexico. It was noted, however, that they both disappeared in the same area at the same time. So basically, these objects are headed in completely opposite directions and both disappear at about the same time. Interesting. With daylight the next day, Mexican authorities began a search for the missing plane. Approximately 10:35 hours, there came a radio report that wreckage from the missing plane had been spotted from the air. Almost immediately came a report of a second plane on the ground a few miles from the first. A few minutes later, an additional report stated that the second plane was circular shaped and apparently in one piece, although damaged. A few minutes after that, the Mexican military clamped their radio silence on all search efforts. So once that got out, they clammed out, and they knew what they had there at that point. Or at least they had a pretty good idea. And that overlay that you're seeing there is, I believe, from History Channel. They did this piece many years ago, and I think that's very interesting, that the way that they've depicted it there.
Tommy, what year did you say this was? I'm sorry.
1974.
1974.
Mm-hmm. The radio interceptions were reported through channels of this to the CIA. Possibly as many as 2 additional government agencies also received reports, but such has not been confirmed as of this date. The CIA immediately began forming a recovery team. The speed with which the team and its equipment was assembled suggests that this was either a well-rehearsed exercise or one that had been performed prior to the event. So that's what Philip Stone, I'm not Philip Stone, but what's his name? Tim Stone, the military guy, Clifford Stone.
Stone.
Just
Yeah.
passed away. Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's very similar to what he always described, that they basically had teams set up all over the United States just in case this sort of thing happened. They had procedures and everything like that in place so they could jump on these craft. In the meantime, requests were initiated at the highest levels between the United States and Mexican governments that the U.S. recovery team be allowed onto Mexican territory to assist. These requests were met with professed ignorance and a flat refusal of any cooperation. Well, of course, the Mexican government's got a piece of technology that could be, millions of years ahead of anything else that anybody knows about. They're not going to just give that to the United States government. They're going to go out there and try to recover that themselves. I wouldn't blame them. By 2100 hours on August 26 of 1974, the recovery team had assembled and had been staged at Fort Bliss. Several helicopters were flown in from some unknown source and assembled in a secured area. These helicopters were painted a neutral sand color and bore no markings. Eyewitnesses indicate that there were 3 smaller craft, very probably UH-1 Hueys from the description, old helicopters of the time. There was also a larger helicopter, possibly a Sea Stallion, Personnel from this team remained with their craft and had no contact with other Fort Bliss personnel. So what's going on there is this UFO recovery team, and let's call it that because that's what it is. This
Right.
UFO recovery team was on standby while they're trying to figure out, or they're trying to riddle around with the Mexican government to get permission to basically, violate their sovereign territory. Satellite and reconnaissance aircraft overflight that day indicated that both the crash disk and the civilian aircraft had been removed from the crash sites, loaded onto flatbed trucks. Later flights confirmed that a convoy had departed the area headed south. Okay, and this is where the plot thickens, folks, right here. At this point, the CIA had to make a choice: either allow this unknown aircraft to stay in the hands of the Mexican government or to launch the recovery team, supplemented by any required military support to take the craft, which, by the way, is an act of war all day long. Just, that's international law. When you send armed people to someone else's territory, yeah, that's what you've done there. There occurred, however, an event that took the choice out of their hands. High altitude overflights indicated that the convoy had stopped before reaching any inhabited areas or major roads. Recon showed no activity on the ground, and radio contact between the Mexican recovery team and its headquarters had completely ceased. A low altitude, high speed overflight was ordered, so a spy plane essentially. Photos returned by that aircraft showed all trucks and jeeps stopped, with some open doors and 2 human bodies laying on the ground beside 2 vehicles. The decision was immediately made to launch the recovery team, but the actual launching was held up for the arrival of additional equipment and 2 additional personnel. It was not until 1438 hours that the helicopters departed Fort Bliss. Okay, so in summary, what they're saying here is that they did some overflights after the Mexicans grabbed all this equipment, or grabbed the wreckage rather, and took off with it. They were headed, to the south, and all of a sudden everything stopped, and now they're doing overflights with spy planes and all that, and they're seeing a bunch of dead Mexican soldiers on the ground. Okay. The 4 helicopters followed the border down towards the Presidio, then turned and entered Mexican airspace north of Candelaria, I believe.
Right.
They were over the convoy site. They were over the convoy site at 16:53 hours. All convoy personnel were dead, most within the trucks. Some recovery team members dressed in bioprotection suits reconfigured the straps holding the object to the flatbed truck, then attached them to a cargo cable from the Sea Stallion. By 17:14 hours, the recovered object was on its way to U.S. territory. Before leaving the convoy site, members of the recovery team gathered together the Mexican vehicles and bodies, then destroyed all with high explosives. This included the pieces of the civilian light plane which had been involved in the mid-air collision. At 17:46 hours, the Hueys departed. So we were in it. The United States went in there, grabbed all the wreckage, and then at that point they assembled all the Mexican equipment and the bodies and actually burned those bodies up. Now that's a pretty bold statement right there if you think about it. I mean, this is someone else's military, somebody else's soldiers, and the United States military taking it upon themselves to do that. They must have had a pretty darn good reason. Okay.
Yeah, it's like they're covering it all up so that nobody knew there was a mid-air collision and then a disc crashed.
Exactly. I mean, if this was a Cessna plane crash, I mean, those happen, all the time, basically. That's nothing to see. But for whatever reason, the military two militaries were very interested in what was going on here. Okay, the Hueys caught up with the Sea Stallion as it re-entered U.S. airspace. The recovery team then proceeded to a point in the Davis Mountains, approximately 25 miles northeast of Valentine. There they landed and waited until 0225 hours the next morning. At that time, they resumed the flight and rendezvous with a small convoy on the road between Van Horn and Kent. The recovered disc was transferred to a large truck enough to handle it and capable of being sealed totally. Some of the personnel from the Hueys transferred to this convoy. All helicopters then returned to their original bases for decontamination procedures. The convoy continued nonstop, using back roads and smaller highways and staying away from the cities. The destination of the convoy was reportedly Atlanta, Georgia. Here the hard evidence thins out. One unconfirmed report states that the disc was eventually transferred to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Another says that the disc was transferred to another unnamed base, or was taken directly to this unknown base from Atlanta. The best description of the disc was that it was 16 feet 5 inches in diameter, convex on both upper and lower surfaces, and to some degree, possessing no visible doors or windows. The thickness was slightly less than 5 feet. The color was silver, much like the polished steel. There was no visible lights or any propulsion means. There were no markings. There were two areas of the rim that showed damage, one showing an irregular hole approximately 12 inches in diameter with an indented material around it. The other damage was described as a dent about 2 feet wide. The weight of the object was estimated as approximately 1,500 pounds based on the effect of the weight on the carrying helicopter and those who transferred it to the truck. There was no indication that in the documentation available as to whether anything was visible in the hole. It seems likely that the damage within the hole was caused by the collision with the civilian aircraft. That collision occurred while the object was traveling approximately 1,700 knots. Okay, now that's pretty much the official story of what went on, but there is more to it. And a couple of things. Now, it depends on who you're asking, and it depends on who's telling the story, I suppose. But one of the interesting things about this is when the United States went in there and made a grab for the craft, and they carried it out on the Sea Stallion, which is like the heaviest lifting helicopter that we have. First of all, the Sea Stallion is not normally something that's, on land. I mean, those helicopters are usually out there on an aircraft carrier or something like that. I found that interesting. But as the story goes, what happened was this disc, this disc was making it very difficult for the helicopter to carry it. It was causing some sort of an interference or something of that nature was happening to this machine. And as a result of that, they knew that they weren't going to be able to airlift this thing all the way to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which happens to be right with my hometown. And I've heard of this. And it was rumored to have been brought there. However, it had a heck of a trip along the way. Because it could not be carried via air, they put it on a truck. But the problem is something that large, you can't exactly drive through the streets of major cities and things of that nature. So they had to take the back roads the whole way. In fact, they had to take the back roads around Arizona and all the way up through the mountains because they were so concerned that anybody would see this object and wonder what it was. That at some point they ended up in the Colorado River or a river, and they tried to float it across the river. on like a barge kind of thing. Well, the barge breaks loose and actually comes down and slams into the Hoover Dam. Okay. And they were very concerned about possible damage to the dam. They were concerned about damage to the vehicle. Well, anyway, they finally get it back on land, and they drove it all the way to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And the reason that you hear about craft and alien bodies and things like that ending up in Wright-Pat is because Wright-Patterson Air Force Base has a specialty. In fact, one thing that they do is their specialty is reverse engineering craft or other people's equipment. Like captured Russian MiGs have ended up there, Hind helicopters, anything that we capture from an adversary ends up there for analysis. And that's exactly why growing up, I mean, I remember hearing about the Roswell crash debris and the bodies. My teachers in grade school in the 70s would talk about that. I mean, everybody in that area will swear to you that that's where that stuff ended up. So the fact that this crash or any other crash that we have ends up there does not surprise me in the least. Tim?
Right, I agree with everything you said, and well done, Tommy. Good synopsis of the Mexican Roswell case. Terry, any comments?
I was just going to say, I spent 6 years in the Air Force from 73 to 79. And during those years, I heard several people, enlisted guys like me, and this is all hearsay, of course, but tell me that they had been the Wright-Pat, either stationed or PCS there, temporarily. And they swore up and down there was all kinds of crazy stuff stored there. I heard all kinds of stories. I'm sure a lot of it was. But, when you hear that much, there's probably an element of truth to it somewhere, I would think.
Mm-hmm. I remember as a child, my uncle, my father's brother, was married to a girl that lived in Kentucky, and her father was I think it was a major at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. This guy was so important that they would literally fly him from Kentucky to the base during the week and then fly him home for the weekend. He did this all the time. And he and I ended up going to a trip to the store together. And I figure I'm probably 10, 11 years old, something like that. And this guy really took a shine to me. He really liked me a lot. I mean, really got along with him well and all that. On the way back from this shopping trip, I said something as a kid, being stupid. I said, there's aliens there, right? Or something to that effect. You can tell me, one of those deals. And after I did that, this guy's attitude toward me went and did a complete 180. I mean, he wouldn't even look at me after that. He wouldn't be in the same room with me. His attitude toward me, I mean, just completely changed. And it made me feel uncomfortable being in his house like that. So that's all I can say. I mean, he really clammed up.
It says a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Almost the same thing that's happened to the UFO subject up until the information Terry presented this evening. I mean, after the UFO report, it almost seemed like a hammer slam down on the subject because the media was completely silent. I mean, there were no new news articles, no new Lou Elizondos out there telling us new information. Everybody that was out there prior to June 25th all of a sudden ceased their activity. So it was pretty much the same thing. It's like the hammer coming down.
I think people in general may be a little bit desensitized to it because there was so much hype about this report that was going to come out. Then it happened, and it was all, congressional speak, not really meant for the average person to read and understand. And so everybody felt a little bit let down. And, I think, we're all a little bit desensitized to it.
Yes, I agree.
I agree with that. Absolutely. Because that thing, they dropped information that told you that, yeah, these things are real. And then it just kind of blew right over. Like everybody's like, UFOs are real. So what? And I guess I kind of think it's a little bit bigger deal than that personally. But for whatever reason, again, I think that the way that the report was dropped and the manner as which it was dropped and the contents of the public report were very atypical of what we always get from the military. Why change plans when the plan always works? Just give them a little bit of nothing, and that's it. And that's what we got again.
What do you think, Lisa?
I agree with Terry. Like when they were about the UFOs and that. I didn't think they really said much about it. I find it kind of disappointing, really. Like I was
Right.
expecting to hear more. Like, I mean, how long? Like over 70 years now, and it's still. It hasn't really changed a lot, really. It's like we're going in a circle. It's just like they don't really want to admit.
Yeah.
And it's
Right.
just, I don't know. And if they're going to say any more in the future, I don't know. It's hard to say. I found it very disappointing.
Well, it'd be nice if we could get a nickel's worth of transparency, but that's just out of the question. I mean, that's just not something that certainly the United States government is ever going to release. I mean, there have been other governments, excuse me, that have researched this, to the hilt. I mean, the Chileans, they're very interested in UFOs. There've been all kinds of other nations that have done this, but I suspect that the reason that they haven't come forward with a lot of information that they have is fear of economic retribution or something like that from the United States. Therefore, they're essentially afraid to come forward with the information that they have without clearance from the United States. Terry, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you make a good point. I think the Belgians were very transparent back whenever there was the thing called the Belgian flap, 1993 or so, I think.
Right.
And, there was a lot of footage released and a lot of high-ranking officers came out and made public statements. Leslie Kean, the New York Times reporter who wrote the book, and I can't think the name of her book, wrote an excellent book, but she went and she got kind of frustrated that she couldn't get anywhere with the United States military and thought, well, I'll talk to some other countries' military people. And she was well received in Brazil and Argentina and Belgium and all over the place. And but yeah, I agree with Tommy. Makes a good point. There might be a financial string connected to being candid that nobody wants to. Yeah.
Just a line that they're afraid to cross for numerous. It could be economic reasons. It could be various other reasons. But I think that the Chileans, they're the one that had that sighting with the craft that was blowing that cloud out of it and all of that.
The infrared film didn't show up on regular film, but it showed up in infrared, and it was taken by a helicopter, I believe, wasn't it?
Yeah, yep, sure was, and that got them interested in it big time, and then all of a sudden they just stopped talking about it. I mean, it was like a big deal in their media and everything else, and suddenly it wasn't. So,
right.
Don't know, some kind of pressure there is what I'm guessing.
I think there's a lot of collaboration between countries, especially with the United States taking the lead, though, in regards to suppression.
Sure. All right. Well, listen, I guess you want to go ahead and wrap it, Tim?
Sure.
All right, folks. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, any last comments, Tommy?
Yeah, actually, I just want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank our guest, Lisa Savoy. Thank you for being here. Very interesting story. Terry, it's always a pleasure. We feel like we hit the jackpot every time you show up, sir. We love it. Everybody, want to thank everybody for coming out. Please remember that we're going to be starting the show an hour later from now on. So it's going to be 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern time every Saturday. Same quality content and all that. We're just going to kind of switch things up a little bit. Let's see if there's anything else I have to add. Oh, yes, please check out our website. That's www.ufomannetwork.com. If you folks have any sightings or anything to report, we have a link out there on the site called Report a Sighting. Go ahead and click on that, submit your information, and we'll have someone get back to you as soon as we can. Tim?
Also, if you can, please share us to your social media platforms so that we can grow the channel, because as long as we grow the channel, we can kind of overcome the algorithms put out there by YouTube, and we can provide more content and larger names, bigger names in ufology, and get the information out to you. Of course, I got to say, there's not much bigger of a name than Terry Lovelace, but
hard to top that one.
Right, hard to top that one. And the last thing I want to say is thanks to everyone on the panel. And thanks to everybody else who was watching online. Terry, any last comments?
Oh, I just want to say it's a pleasure to see you, Lisa, and talk to you in person. We've exchanged emails over the years. It's nice. And congratulations on your upcoming book. I can't wait to get my hands on one.
Yes. I'll let you know right away. You'll be the first people to know when it
Please
comes
do
out.
let
Yeah.
us know.
I'd like to get a copy too, but I want mine signed.
I can do that. Yeah,
Okay.
I can sign them all for 4 of you. I mean, 3 of you is no problem.
That would be great. And then when it comes out, we'll show it on our channel and we will definitely feature you again.
Yes.
Okay, so as always, from all of us here on the UFO Man channel, good night.